Good morning, everyone. We can do better than that. Good morning. I'm Esther Watts. No, I've got it wrong already. It's great to see so many of you here. It's great to be at the Glastonbury of social prescribing. And great to have so many people joining us online today as well. As you can see from this wonderful stage in front of us, we have a fantastic and stellar panel, and we're going to get stuck into it. So to start off with, let me introduce Jayne Hoarty.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Hi, I'm Jayne. I am a social prescribing link worker in an organisation called One Knowsley, as the name would suggest, based in Knowsley in Merseyside. I have been a social prescriber for around 2.5 years now, and I'm actually in a very unique position in the sense that I've worked for an organisation that does social prescribing not so well, and currently work for an organisation who, in my opinion, has got the perfect mix. Our organisation is a 10-strong team of social prescribers. So within One Knowsley, we have a social prescriber specifically for perinatal mental health, and we also have a health and wellbeing coach within the team. One Knowsley is actually a story of two halves. We have the community development sector within One Knowsley, and we also have the social prescribing team. This puts us in a really unique position because we're able to focus on the need of the local community and the need of the sector, not just the social prescribing service as such. So we look at the two sections of One Knowsley as one whole. This usually helps with bridging and plugging gaps that we find within our service. So I'm sure people in the room have experienced where we're looking at sectors that are saturated at the moment, where we've got organisations that are at capacity for numerous reasons, whether that be statutory or community organisations. And in One Knowsley, we have a community development section that help support that. We are the safety net for the sector. We're able to build resilience, and we focus on that throughout our work. And we're able to look at the links between primary care and social prescribing and build those vertical and horizontal relationships between the different parties that are involved in social prescribing.
Thanks very much, Jayne. And next up, we have the wonderful Lisa Jarvis.
The wonderful Lisa Jarvis. Wow.
Everyone's wonderful on this
Yeah,
panel.
absolutely. We're all wonderful. So my name's Lisa Jarvis. I actually have two roles. So I'm the youth social prescribing lead for a fantastic organisation called Street Games. And we support lots of organisations across the whole of the UK to really grow youth social prescribing and help them develop that in their local areas. And then in the other part of my job, I work for NHS England in the Southwest, and I'm responsible for social prescribing across the whole region. But I also lead on a national demonstrator around armed forces social prescribing. So children and young people social prescribing and armed forces social prescribing are my two passions. And I think what I'm here to represent today is children and young people social prescribing, because I think that often children and young people's voices go very unheard. And we know up until very recently, some people thought that actually you couldn't do social prescribing with children and young people and that it was only for adults. But actually that messaging is very much starting to change, and we're starting to see a really big demand for children and young people social prescribing, particularly post-COVID, because we know that obviously mental health support needs have gone up after COVID, lots of social isolation, lots of loneliness, and actually social prescribing can provide a really helpful solution in that, with some very normal everyday solutions that allow young people to have the permission to have their voices heard and to have that choice and control. And I guess what we see with children and young people social prescribing is helping young people to develop a bit of their own kit bag. So actually they have the tools that they put in their kit bag, and they don't always pick up their kit bag, they don't always take it with them. But actually when life gets a bit tough or things are a bit rocky, they can dip into their kit bag, and that helps them create that resilience, that stability, also developing skills for life and that independence. But I think the other thing to say about youth social prescribing, as well as all social prescribing, is it's really, really important that we work in a collaborative way. We can no longer work in our silos. We're all experts and we all have a bit of the puzzle. And I think it's really important, a bit like you see on the panel today, that we have all those experts coming together to support young people to have the best, great lives possible based on where they're at.
Thank you, Sam. I was going to ask a follow-up question, if I may. How can we ensure that there is more social prescribing for children and young people?
Okay, so I'm really aware that actually I don't want to take up everybody's time, because I could sit here and we'd still be here at 5 o'clock discussing that. So if you really want to discuss it, grab me in the foyer afterwards and we'll discuss it. But I think it's about looking at that specific skill set for people to deliver youth social prescribing, because it is different and you do need a different skill set. And it's about actually working with your local organisations, voluntary sector, education, social care, to really look at the model that's going to work for your local area so that we're delivering social prescribing properly at place.
Thank you, Sam. I don't know, but please, Lisa, do please talk to Lisa in the foyer later. She's very happy to discuss this with you. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dagmar Zeuner, who is the Director of Public Health from Merton.
Hi, I'm really delighted that you actually picked a Director of Public Health, because I had a little bit of a confidence crisis, to be honest, in the artist's room, and said, I'm the odd one out. But so I'm Dagmar Zeuner, as Esther said. I'm working in a London borough as just a normal Director of Public Health. I actually also am one of the vice chairs of the Association of Directors of Public Health, so you can feel I'm pretty passionate about what I'm doing. But I used to be a pediatrician, so I'm feeling a bit more relaxed. I'm sitting next to Lisa. And when I was a clinician, the one thing that really bugged me was how limited my options were. And, you know, working with kids, I felt it was just so unfair. The distribution of health and sickness in kids, they haven't chosen, you know, who their parents are, etc. So I was looking for something else and went into public health. And so my proposition, when I'm thinking about social prescribing, and that's why I'm so passionate about it and delighted to be here, is that I actually think it should be part of a public health approach. Because the beauty of social prescribing is that it actually absolutely says we're after a social model. And it's not just a biomedical model of ill health or disease. It's actually a social model of health. And that's a really key thing about public health. But there's also something that is a bit more agitating. And I love that amongst the social prescribers, and I can see it in the audience. There are advocates, because they know the community and they have a legitimacy to talk to our politicians and say things must change. So the two things go really well together. And before I get stopped, I needed to slip in one more thing. I was involved in social prescribing right from the beginning, you know, in the early days when it wasn't really talked about much. And we were agonizing over the name. Social prescribing, I thought, actually, that's still pretty medical, that prescribing bit. And now I thought probably Tom and Esther just get a little bit of a panic attack. It's now a National Academy for Social Prescribing, and I'm saying change that name. So I'm not. I'm turning it round, because what I think we now have is the opportunity to go the other way. So to export the ethos of social prescribing into other prescribing. And Sam, we've got you here. You're a clinician, because, you know, when you dish out your blood pressure tablets, it's a bit more to blood pressure normally than just that tablet. So for me, there is an opportunity. So stick to them.
I have to say I agree with you. I also had my doubts about the prescribing name, but it's helped us get under the skin of things. And can I also say, before we move on to Sam, there are no odd ones out here. We are the odd ones out, and we should be proud of it. Yay. Sam Alford.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here today. So thank you very much. And assuming that you can hear me. So I'm the Green Social Prescribing Programme Manager working for NHS England. So some of you may already be aware of the Green Social Prescribing Programme. We've had 2-year funding from the Treasury, the Shared Outcomes Fund. And it's a cross-governmental programme, and it's all about how the different departments can work together to really embed green social prescribing, so nature-based activities to improve people's health and well-being. And on this programme, we have a particular focus around embedding it to improve people's mental health. So it's about tackling and preventing mental ill health. And we've been working with 7 test and learn sites. So we've had sites dotted around the country, and I'm sure there are representatives here in the audience and maybe online today as well. And I'll say a little bit about some of the work that they've been doing to try and change some of the cultures and the systems in place and the processes to really make this work at a place-based level and within integrated care systems. So it's been a very community-based approach. We've really encouraged the green social prescribing sites to engage very widely with their local people and local communities. We've asked them to undertake a co-design approach. So we asked them to work with people with lived experience of mental ill health and of living with some of the inequalities that lead to the different access issues and the things that lead to social inequality and health inequalities and inequalities in experience for people. And we've asked them to bring those people together with some of the green organisations working in local places. So that's voluntary and community organisations quite often that are delivering nature-based activities and interventions, and also bringing the views of health and care professionals and other professionals working sort of in the voluntary sector. And it's been really interesting because they've been focusing on how to remove some of the barriers to participation in green social prescribing activities. So things like transport, for example, and access. And they've also been looking at how they can sort of plan and promote and deliver some of these services in a way that makes sense really to local people, and in a way that people are more likely to obviously want to attend these services and participate. So the co-design process, as I said, is very much focused on sort of removing some of those barriers. And I'll just give you a couple of examples, if that's okay, around how some of our sites have done that. And just to say, although I'm going to name check a couple of our sites, I just want to say now they've all done an absolutely fantastic job. And I haven't got time to mention everybody, but we have got various information reports, case studies, etc., available on the NHS Futures collaboration platform. If you look at the social prescribing pages, and there is a green hub on there at the moment as well. So in Greater Manchester, they've done an amazing job actually of delivering their green social prescribing activities in their city parks. So they've got a fantastic network of green space across the city. So they're delivering those activities where people live in those local communities, because as I said, we know that the ability to travel and the affordability of travel costs and the distance to travel to things are major barriers for people. And local people have actually informed where green social prescribing services have been delivered. So, for example, in our South Yorkshire site, they were very keen, the local community were very keen that the services should be delivered in communities that had high levels of deprivation and where there were higher levels of health inequalities. And by working with local community leaders and local community groups, the sites have been able to really reach out into those health inclusion groups, and our emerging evaluation data does back that up. So that's very pleasing. And then just quickly, other ways in which the sites have engaged people. They've been involved in developing the grant criteria in some of the sites that have had grant funding available. They've informed those criteria. People have sat on the grant panels, so people with lived experience of mental ill health and health inequalities have sat on those panels and actually helped to shape the decisions about how money is invested and which activities have been delivered for them in their local areas. So I just finished my section by saying that we really believe that it's about offering lots of different opportunities to engage with local communities. And it's about doing that over the lifetime of a project or a program. It's not just doing it at the beginning or just talking about it when you want to evaluate how things have gone, but providing lots of opportunities in an ongoing way, and basically just to keep listening and to keep learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And last but very much not least, we've got Dr. Sam Everington from Bromley by Blow.
I'm going to tell you a secret, and I don't want you to tell anyone else. The reason
The wrong room to say that to, I think.
Possibly.
the reason we called it social prescribing years ago was it was a secret conspiracy to re-educate all the doctors and nurses in this country using their language.
Brilliant.
But don't tell them that, okay? So I'm a GP at the Bromley by Blow Centre in East London. We've been doing social prescribing for about 30 years as a lead of commissioner. I put it in every practice in Tower Hamlets, and then we persuaded government to put it in every practice in the country. We are so far ahead of what happened all those years ago, and we see that in the family we are here together with today. Why social prescribing? Why was I passionate about it as a doctor? Because I've been trained as a scientist, as a biomedical expert. And that's because virtually on day one, and by the way, the first thing I did in my lockup surgery with 2 outdoor toilets was to set up complementary therapists in the surgery. I realized that actually I could only deliver 20% at most of people's health if I didn't do something much wider than a traditional doctor. But it's worse than that. And actually, I think Dagmar illustrates that. And when you look at some of the figures now, over 65s, up to 20% of admission to hospital due to adverse effects of drugs. Social prescribing isn't just about providing 100% of health. It's also about challenging some of the things that we know are wrong going on in our health service. Now, that does not mean we don't do fantastic biomedicine. We're absolutely at the front of digital, but you cannot be a good healthcare worker or a social prescriber unless you're doing all of this. You don't need to do it all yourself, but you need to have a family around you to make it happen. And of course, I've got a family at Bromley by Blow. There's over 100 different projects there. And actually, we define our role as a family very simply. Our mission statement, it's not something typical that you'll see in systems, which is great outcomes. Yeah, I mean, you know all these things. It's very, very simple. And I want you to remember this because I think it goes to the core of social prescribing. It's fun, it's friendship, it's compassion, and assume it's possible. And it's no more simple or complicated than that. So then I'm going to illustrate, I'm going to take you in a 1-minute tour of Bromley by Blow. So how do we actually make some of this happen? So if you came to our centre, 3-acre site, 100 different projects, you start on the street with the connect zone connecting into the cafe where our social prescribers hang out. And that's the way to describe it, because people just walk off the street, talk about their hemorrhoids, talk about their plumbing, whatever it is they want to talk about, focusing on what matters to them. And of course, that's the key thing that you have driven also. What I was taught at medical school was, what's the matter with somebody? What we are talking about now is focusing what matters to people. And of course, great things come from that and better health outcomes. You could come into our cafe there, which is a training centre for people with learning disabilities. We share space. You can walk behind our reception. You can walk anywhere. There's no barriers. There's no CCTV cameras. By the way, that's much safer, if only people realize that. And you walk into our space, there's no signposts. There's no signposts telling you where to go, because actually we encourage our guests to get lost. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what happens when you get lost? 2 things. One is somebody says, you look lost. How can I help you? Or you say, I'm lost. How can I help you? Imagine if you took all those signposts out of the hospitals and everyone got lost. Imagine the human conversations that would happen. It's a church, a United Reformed church. My first amazing wife was a tiger mum. You'll know these sort of characters. And 28 years ago, when my second of 5 children got christened, she looked at the vicar, Andrew Mawson, who's now in the House of Lords, and said, Andrew, I've got a problem. I don't believe in God. Now, 28 years ago, it's probably a little bit more acceptable now. That's kind of a showstopper. And he looked at her and he said, oh, no, that's not a problem. Now, what do you want in the service? And that defines our ethos too, is actually taking everybody as they are and welcoming them into our family. That's what social prescribing is. And that's why I love these events, actually, because it's like going home to my family. It's about allotment gardens. So we're in a park. So we developed allotment gardens, gardening and health. We persuaded National Gardening Scheme, King's Fund, to do a report on gardening and health. It's probably the best thing I can prescribe for my patients in terms of mental and physical health. We're connected to the schools. So as the GP social enterprise in Tower Hamlets, 36 general practices, we now run the school nursing service. Only one whole-time equivalent in every school. Our campaign is to have one in every school. And when I say nurse, it's a bit like, actually, what is a doctor now when you see the sort of things I've done? I'm talking about social prescribing and everything that goes with it. And so badly needed in terms of children. Haven't they suffered under COVID? Just significant mental illness has gone up from 12 to 17%. And when I trained as a doctor, you never saw type 2 diabetes except in the elderly. Now I'm seeing it in teenagers. We have a ticking time bomb. I come from Norway, 15% of people overweight, 60% in this country. And finally, there's something, assume it's possible, it's also about saying yes. Our systems, our structures always say no. By the way they say no is, can you show us the research? Can you give us a business case? Even though it's blindingly obvious social prescribing, there's nothing to prove. There is something about what is most effective. There's something about saying yes, but the system often says no. And the final thing I want to leave you with is that I've learned over the years, if you're not breaking the rules, you're not doing the right thing. So my challenge to you tomorrow and next week is to break a rule every day. So I leave you then with how I started about our mission statement. What are we about? How do we connect communities? How do communities connect with us? We are like actually a mothership is often how I describe the Bromley by Bow. That's a space of fun, friendship, compassion, and assume it's possible.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was very inspiring. And a well-deserved clap. We've just heard an example there of a place that is well established in its community. It's not the only one, the only site that's doing that. We've got some incredibly successful sites that are rooted in their community where it's going very well. But we also need to acknowledge that there are some challenges, and I will ask our panel to be very brief because we do want to make sure that we have some time for questions from our audience. But I want to acknowledge that there are some challenges. So Jayne, I'm going to come to you first. What would happen if One Knowsley closed its doors tomorrow?
I think that is a really great question, because I think we all within our own silos see our own importance with the role that we're doing, but it is definitely within social prescribing about our communities and about the bigger picture and the impact that we make on our communities and the sector that we work with. And I think within One Knowsley, I think if we were to close the doors tomorrow, the focus on resilience would be lost. The focus on managing sort of the complexities between that primary care community and third sector would diminish. I think we would also lose focus on what matters to you for our patients. We are always reminding our primary care clinicians and other members of the community that the focus is on the patient, that holistic approach. And I also think that the safety net for the sector would be lost.
Great answer. Great answer. Dagmar, if I can come to you next. We're in a situation now where we've got integrated care systems that are just establishing. And what opportunities do we have for ICSs to change, to grow, to reorganize themselves, and what opportunities are there? How are we harnessing those opportunities best? And how can public health play its part in that?
Just a tiny little question, isn't it?
Nice short one.
Got 1 minute.
Let me just have a go. So first of all, I think, and I can say that as a friend of the NHS has to let go of some really ingrained habits and attitudes. If push comes to shove, the NHS says top down. Give me a dashboard, give me a business case, give me a comfort thing, and everything will be fine. They also think better is, and bigger is better, be it an organization, be it a geography, if you push them, yeah. And then the world of the NHS, and I love them dearly, so don't get me wrong, is very NHS-centric. So when they talk about partnerships and integration, there's between primary and secondary care. Wow. Yeah. Now, it is jolly important that primary and secondary care do integrate, and plenty of work to be done and plenty of good work happening. But that's not the end of the story. So for me, that's the first challenge. If they're allowing themselves to let go of those habits, then I say focus on place. So in the integrated care system reform, there is reform for place. Now, often that is a sort of afterthought. Yeah. So you will have heard, and the jargon is overwhelming, but a lot of effort, masses of fancy slides are now being produced for an ICP strategy. Pardon? Yes, an integrated care partnership strategy. And that is at a big level, and it is generic. And to be honest, for me, it hasn't really rocked the planet. But where I want them, and I want them properly in there, is at my local place. And the ICS strategy does allow and says, yes, we will have some place-based structure. And I tell them, actually, I run a health and wellbeing board. That's statutory. I've put a lot of my effort in. We are looking after the conditions for people to thrive. I want you now, with your local partnership committee, to work hand in glove with me to, in a way, complement with holistic services. Because if you have the conditions to thrive and the holistic services, now we talk business. That's public health. Now, what we need, though, for that is that people send me their best staff. Yeah. But if you look at the NHS career structure, up, 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 not the other way down. It's quite a flipping thinking. We want the most senior people, and I want them to spend time not in fancy big Zoom meetings. I want them out there. I've got an absolute gem, can I say, there locally. I drag him out. Now he needs to work with my counsellors. Now, do you know what? Counsellors normally care for their communities. They can be difficult, but who can't? But you need to speak to them, and you need to confront the community. Now, the majority of the community care for what they do. Yes, some are unreasonable. Yes, some are angry for good reasons. But that's where we need NHS people, yeah, to connect and truly integrate. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and that's where I put a lot of effort in to actually work with my Health and Wellbeing Board and my ICS committee to make it really something effective, not just yet another governance structures. And then the other thing is we have to be crafty. Nobody sits on piles of money. You know, nobody has it hidden behind the sofa now. We all need to be super crafty. So let's go with what we've already got. And again, the NHS doesn't understand enough the council. I didn't either when I was in the NHS, if I can confess that here. But, you know, we're talking, Fuller report talks about neighborhood teams. I love the idea. I think that sounds, you know, Sam, along what you've talked about. Actually, you know, there's a lot of work in local government going on around 15-minute neighborhoods. Sounds a bit sounds a bit the same, isn't it? We're talking, the 50-minute neighborhoods have their origin in the climate emergency. Well, it's a health emergency. That's our joint emergency. So why don't we, when we talk about the Fuller report, neighborhood teams and the 15-minute neighborhoods, maybe talk together. We're developing in London super zones around our schools. It's another bit of jargon, but it's a neighborhood around the schools. I can't tell you how much good stuff we've already done. It's another neighborhood approach, and it's for the kids. And then we have the family hubs. There is a lot happening out there. So that's, again, where I want our focus. And if we manage to hold it locally, I think we are on a winner. Obviously, all of you have read the news. The ICB's now almost just born, still with their meconium on, so to speak, in the NHS, now need to make 30% cuts. So the NHS has to hold their line and not revert to type and say, okay, where do we take it from? Let's just get rid of the local stuff, then we have.
Right.
Thank you.
Another well-deserved round of applause. I think that part of what's holding people back on social prescribing is a little bit of squeamishness about getting involved with communities' problems. And if we think communities are messy and difficult and complicated, that goes even more so for children and young people. Lisa, how do we encourage people to be brave, get over themselves and get involved with children and young people?
So I think it goes back to what I said earlier about the right person for the right job. And actually, you need people who've got that real almost youth work skill of being able to engage with children and young people and recognizing that it's different. And that's our kind of social prescribing workforce, and where we see people with those skills to be able to engage and have a conversation with a young person, that works really well. But also to be able to kind of know what's in and what's out. Apparently I'm not cool anymore. It's just that apparently it's an age.
I disagree.
I'm very, very rude. But actually, I don't understand TikTok and Snapchat and all these things that kids use and kind of like that culture of social media in that way. But actually, there are people out there that are engaging with young people all the time that are able to kind of get into that complexity. But I also think it's about that collaboration. There are some absolutely amazing organizations out in the voluntary sector who are working with young people at grassroots level, in parks, on doorsteps. Street Games does a doorstep sport. And actually, it's about how we really engage our voluntary sector community and really work in not just a clinical multidisciplinary team, but that much bigger community multidisciplinary team where we all kind of get involved and hold our bit of the puzzle to support young people to have great lives. And I think the other bit about being scared to get involved, about breaking rules. Young people break rules all the time. And actually, that's part of learning, that's part of growing. And so we've got to allow them the right to get it wrong, because actually that's part of our role as social prescribers, to test, to try, to see what works for them. And it will be messy along the way, but that's part of the fun.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely.
Thank you. Sam Alford, I was going to ask you. So I know that we've heard that the test and learn phase of the Green Social Prescribing Programme is coming to an end. Can you tell us what the next steps are?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, as you said, the funded test and learn phase is coming to a planned end at the end of March, but those sites have been working incredibly hard to establish some of the systems and processes, and most importantly, actually, the relationships that allow this work to really be embedded. And so now we're looking at how do we start to transition all of that learning and that good practice to become business as usual in those local places. And then to look at how do we start to scale that out? How do we start to work with neighbouring integrated care systems, for example? And the national partnership, it's been very effective, very helpful to be able to work with colleagues across government. And there's a commitment across those national partners to continue to work together so we can look for all of those opportunities to continue to embed it in policy and in practice moving forwards. Thank you.
Fantastic. And finally, Dr. Sam, you come from a site that is doing some really fantastic work. You've been very successful and you're very fortunate to be in the position that you are. But looking around at places where social prescribing still has a way to go, what's still standing in our way? And how do we enable more clinicians to be as passionate about this, as stronger believers in social prescribing as you are?
I mean, I think the secret to making this work is a win-win scenario to everyone in the process. You know, in the early days, a lot of skeptical GPs. I remember a guy with a pinstripe suit coming to Bromley Ribo, utterly horrified that patients could walk behind the reception desk and what was going on in reception. And then I said to him, yeah, but guess what? We run reception and that saves us money. Suddenly a light bulb moment. With doctors on our early referral form, we put social isolation, weight, financial problems, and then repeat attenders. Now, if you speak to any doctors, the patients that cause the most problems, struggle, difficulties are those repeat attenders. And they struggle with them. They call them, by the way, heart sink patients, because that's the impact it has on them as clinicians. And so what we were able to then say to them is, look, actually, give us all these patients. We'll help look after them. So the secret with all of this is win-win. Don't go in and be just evangelical about what we do. Yes, that's absolutely vital. But look at the person in front of you. That's what I do as a GP. My first statement always to a patient is, how can I help you? What can I do for you today? And it doesn't matter who you go into, even if it's Jeremy Hunt. So I'll tell you a secret that when I go in, when I went into him, I'm a natural scruff anyway, but I dress down. I wear my Norwegian jumpers because the messages I've come as a friend. And I don't go in and bash him. I say, well, actually, Jeremy, tell me what your problems are and how can I help you? So it's a win-win scenario, absolutely crucial. I think the other thing I'd say to you is you've got to be fearless. I have this philosophy in life, it's not a rehearsal. And this is a good place to say that, isn't it? It's not a rehearsal. So there are moments you need to be as leaders, and the very fact that you are here tells me you are leaders. There are moments you need to be brave and bold, and it's difficult. Even with me and all the challenges I've done with people over the years, I'm just about to do another one in one of the newspapers this weekend. Even me gets nervous about doing these things, but you have to challenge the system. So one of the challenges on the children's issue is 27% of the population, 4% of the NHS budget. And do you know what? When I started saying that initially, people said, well, 4% sounds a lot to me, they said in my commissioning NHS world. So I said, yes, but what should it be? Should it be 4.25 or 4.5? And the answer is they didn't know. And so you've got to go in and challenge, and you do it with charm and passion. Sometimes you do it by marching on the street. Trust me, I've used every single tactic under the sun. But you have to challenge these people. And then you have to appeal to their better sense. Everyone has better sense. You know, you can give a business case. We obviously over the years had tons of ministers come around Bromley Ribo. First of all, I always do it very informally. I don't tell people who they are when they come round. And we bump into people and people tell their story and they realize the authenticity of it. But what they go away with is something that relates to them as a human being, their mother who had breast cancer or their grandfather who's got Alzheimer's. They are human. All these people who hold this money, and by the way, there's tons of money, assume plenty, it's just being spent on the wrong things. My son, as outspoken as my first wife, he's a 30-year-old GP, and he says, Dad, you're an old git who's got a good pension, and by the way, who's ruined the world, and you've screwed us because we're not going to be able to afford to buy houses. Well, do you know what? He's got a point. He has got a point, actually. The intergenerational discrimination in this country is quite shocking, okay? And nobody's really addressing it and dealing with it. And if we don't, we're building up a ticking time bomb. And you see that in what I described as 60% overweight, or the teenagers with type 2 diabetes, and go in and challenge them. And by the way, virtually all these people are parents or grandparents, so appeal to them on that basis. But the key thing is a win-win. And how can I help you? That is a real partnership. And my final point would be, you're partners with everyone. At Bromley by Bow, we're partners with international banks. We're partners with the church. We're partners with the NHS. And we're partners, obviously, with the voluntary sector.
Perfect answer. As I'm sure you're all aware, we could probably have this conversation for the rest of the day, but we don't have too much time, and I want to make sure that we get some questions from our audience. We've probably only got time for a couple. I believe we've got a roving microphone. There's a question over there I can see.
Do I just introduce myself and ask the question, or ask the question directly? Hi everyone, my name is Aaron. I'm the CEO of the International Social Prescribing Pharmacy Association. I'm a PCN pharmacist working for Bespoke Clinical Services, and I'm also the Chief Metaverse Officer for Kings. My question is, don't you think it'd be a good opportunity to leverage the existing footprint for community pharmacists, PCN pharmacists, the dance community, but also you're leveraging Web3 technology to create the foundation of the decentralized social prescribing movement? Because at the moment, the current infrastructure globally is a centralized system, but using decentralized is going to give ownership to the people on the floor, if that makes sense. So my question is, pharmacists, dancers, and Web3 technology.
Does anyone want to come in on that? Anyone got a burning desire?
Can I come probably in around the community pharmacy, because we're trying it out. You're absolutely right. And it was quite interesting. I'm honest with you. Again, there was some innovation funding. You all know how these things happen, not that much time to think. We had the brainstorm. We thought winter fit, it was at the beginning of the winter. What could our community pharmacists do? And they obviously have a fantastic reach, particularly they speak different languages, often ethnic minority languages. And the idea of initially just a winter fit sort of signposting approach, all of a sudden we had that penny dropping and saying, actually, that's social prescribing. And it is so exciting because all of a sudden there is a sort of boost of energy. And they're training their own social prescribers. And we're starting small because if I look back when we started, and Sam has made that point as well, you have to first earn the credibility as well and really sort of tune in. What's a day in the life of a community pharmacist? I don't actually know. You run with it, and then you start to see where are the opportunities. So that's what we're doing. So I think you're spot on.
Just to support, that's something that we're actually doing already in Knowsley, so that's working really well so far. Early days, but so far so good.
Great.
And Sam?
Just very quickly, so we have on one of our sites, we have Greenlight Pharmacy Social Enterprise. We have a joint venture with them where we train the pharmacists jointly, and all our surgeries now have community pharmacists in them as part of our team.
Really kills me to cut this conversation short, but it will go on for the rest of the day. Please do bring your questions to the big conversation later on this afternoon. And I hope you'll join Esther and myself in thanking our wonderful panel, Dr. Sam Everington, Dagmar Zeuner, Lisa Jarvis, and Jayne Hoarty. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you later.